we're going to go ahead now and use our ideas of simplifying um, one side to get it to look like the other side, what we did yesterday, to help us in trying to solve trigonometric equations. You're going to want your answers always in radians unless they are telling you otherwise. If it doesn't specify, then it's radians. So we're going to start out here. We have cosecant. Most of you don't know what cosecant is. You don't have those memorized off the top of your head. So let's go ahead and change cosecant into 1 over y. So 1 over the sine of y is equal to root 2. So now we have a fraction equal to a fraction. So we're trying to solve it for what's in the bottom. So let's go ahead and just flip both sides upside down. Well, we typically don't leave a root in the bottom, so we'll rationalize it. Once you have the sine of your angle on one side by itself, you pretty much want to ask yourself, okay, the sine of what angle is root 2 over 2? And then you got to say, okay, well, the sine of what angle is root 2 over 2? Well, I know the sine of pi over 4 is a root 2 over 2. You should also say, oh, I know the sine of 3 pi over 4 is also root 2 over 2. But since we can go around our unit circle more than once, we got to say, well, it's really going to be pi over 4 plus any multiple of a full revolution around, meaning 2 pi n. And the same idea down here, since you can go around more than once. Now, on this one here, a lot of people confuse this one for saying, well, it's the same as the cosine of negative pi over 3. Well, what I just wrote here in red and what we have up here are two totally different things. What I wrote in red, you know your angle is negative pi over 3. Up here in the blue, you're looking for your angle. Two totally different statements. Well, if we go ahead and try to solve the blue, it's really the cosine of some angle is negative pi over 3, but negative pi over 3 is approximately this. You should remember that cosine is never going to go beyond 1 and negative 1. It's always in between. Since this is beyond negative 1, then our answer is antiset. We know it will never happen. When we take a look over here, we're going to go ahead and try to get our trig function on one side all by itself. So to get our trig function by itself, we need to go ahead and get rid of our plus root 2. So we're going to subtract our root 2 from both sides. The next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and get rid of this 2. Right now it's 2 times that, so we're going to divide both sides by 2. So we get this. Because you always want to get your trig function on one side by itself. Now that we have our trig function on one side by itself, you want to ask yourself, okay, the sine, because that's what we're dealing with, of what angle is a negative root 2 over 2? Well, when is sine equal to negative root 2 over 2? Right here at 5 pi over 4. Where else? At 7 pi over 4. Well, we had said the sine of what angle is that? The angle that we were dealing with here was our 3 theta. So we need to go 3 theta equals that, and 3 theta equals that. And then once again, you need to remember your plus 2 pi n, because it can go around more than once. Well, we still don't have our angle by itself. So what we need to do is we need to get rid of this 3. It's 3 times your angle, so we're going to have to divide everything by 3. Divide the left side by 3, we get this. Divide the right side by 3, 2 pi n over 3. Divide this fraction by 3. Remember, dividing by 3 is the same as multiplying by 1/3. And then if you multiply the top of your 1 times your 5/3 and the bottom of your 3 from your 1/3 times 4, you get this. So these bottom two things are the answers for our particular problem. Now, there's a slight mistake over here. There is no 3 here. So those would be your answers. You always want to start off by getting your trig function on one side by itself. And you'll notice that here we have our trig function of cosine on one side by itself. There's nothing added or subtracted or multiplied to the cosine itself. Yes, we have an angle, but that's okay. So we get our cosine on one side by itself, which it is, and then you ask yourself, okay, what angle, when I take the cosine, do I get a root 2 over 2? Well, when you ask yourself that, you should say, well, I'm going to get a pi over 4. So you got to take your angle, 4x plus pi over 4, equal to the angle of when cosine is equal to root 2 over 2, which is pi over 4. But then you got to remember plus 2 pi n. And then you got to ask yourself, okay, what other angle is cosine equal to a root 2 over 2? And that is 7 pi over 4. And then you got to remember your plus 2 pi n. Then you want to go ahead and start solving this for x. So you need to finish getting x by itself. So to get x by itself, you'd actually have to go ahead and add a fourth of a pi to both sides. A fourth of a pi onto your fourth of a pi is where 2 pi over 4, or pi over 2. Fourth of a pi here onto this gives you 8 pi over 4, which is your 2 pi. Now, this one here is saying start at 2 pi and then go around to any revolution thereafter. When you start here and go around any multiple times and end up there, it's really just a multiple of 2 pi there. So now we need to finish this by getting rid of the 4's. To get rid of the 4's here, we need to go ahead and multiply everything by 1/4 or divide by 4. And we get this. So those are the answers. Here, you want to get your trig function on one side by itself. So you got a 3 to deal with, you got your squaring to deal with. So let's take your tangent squared to the other side. So you get a tangent squared equal to a 3. Then you want to go ahead and get rid of your squaring. So you want to take the square root of the left side. So then you have to take the square root of the right side. So then it's really the tangent of b equaling a positive root 3 and tangent of b equaling a negative root 3. Since you got your trig function by itself, you could say, okay, tangent of what angle is root 3? That's one you're supposed to have memorized. And so then you end up getting this. Then you ask yourself, okay, tangent of what angle is negative root 3? And you say, oh, well, that's 2 pi over 3. Now, when you're dealing with the sine and cosine, you always want to add plus 2 pi n, because the period of sine and cosine is 2 pi. But the period of tangent is pi. So therefore, we go plus pi n, because the period of pi, or tangent, is pi. Now, we don't have to do anything else to get b by itself. B is already by itself, so we're done.